Well, hello and welcome to Trade Deadline Day. We are about 2.5 hours away from the trade deadline. Been a quiet day so far for the Mets. Not that surprising because they did have a big day yesterday. They were able to acquire two top-of-the-line relief pitchers, Tyler Rogers, Ryan Helsley, two guys that are going to help them tremendously. That was their biggest need, right, going into this trade deadline. We knew that relief pitching was the biggest issue. Now we also have issues at center field. We also have issues with our starting pitchers not going deep into games. Lucky to get 4 or 5 innings out of these guys. And those issues still need to be addressed. And so far, they just haven't been able to do anything yet. Doesn't mean that I don't think they will at this point, but we're getting down to the end, and hopefully there's a nice flurry of moves here, not just by the Mets, but by everyone. I'd like to see some more news as I'm just constantly refreshing Twitter here. But we've gotten kind of bad news today that a guy that a lot of us wanted is probably not going to be traded, and that's Luis Robert Jr., a guy that I definitely was interested in. Not because he's having a great season or because he's a great player, but he does have the ability to be much better than what they have now. Tyrone Taylor has been awful in center field. Not really his fault. He's a fourth outfielder. He's not supposed to be a guy who starts every game for the Mets. Jeff McNeil has been fine out there, but he's not defensively a center fielder. He needs to be more of a corner outfielder, second base. He's just not a center fielder. And he's done fine there. He's been adequate. He's done the job that he's needed to do. But at the end of the day, that's not his position. He shouldn't be playing there. And they need a real center fielder who can hit. And right now, there's really not that guy available. I think right now, if you were to ask me if they're going to get a center fielder, I would say their best option is going to be Cedric Mullins. Is he that much of an upgrade? Is he that much better than what they currently have in Tyrone Taylor? Yes, he's an upgrade, but he's not a game-changing bat. He's not a game-changing player. He's not going to make you into a World Series favorite because you got Cedric Mullins. He's just not. But he is better than what they have, and I think that he would definitely help the Mets in this situation. A legitimate center fielder, a legitimate, a guy who has some pop. I think he has 15 home runs this year, but he's not that great of a center fielder in all honesty. He's okay out there, but at this point in his career as a mid-30s kind of player. I'm not sure exactly how old he is. He's between 33 and 35. I'm not exactly sure how old he is, but he's diminished in center field. He's not a great defensive center fielder, but I think that's kind of where you're looking right now. I'm happy that the Mets did not go out and get a guy in Harrison Bader, a retread, a guy that was here last year. I wasn't in favor of Bader coming back to the Mets. Happy that he didn't, and he ended up going to Philadelphia. But, I don't know that there's really much of an upgrade. If they're not able to get Luis Robert, I just don't see them really upgrading much at that position. But let's talk a little bit about what the Mets did do, and that is build a bullpen that has the chance to be truly elite. You already had Edwin Diaz as your closer. Then you add in Tyler Rogers, who's been one of the best relief pitchers in baseball this year, a true back end of the bullpen kind of guy, a guy who could pitch in the 7th and 8th inning. And then you go out and get Ryan Helsley, who has been a closer. He is the Cardinals' closer, and now you come in to have him be your 8th inning guy to set up for Edwin Diaz, and I think it's a huge upgrade there. You take a guy like Garrett, who really was your most reliable reliever other than Edwin Diaz, and now he's going to be pitching in the 5th and 6th inning. And I like Garrett in those positions because he does well with runners on base, or at least he did early in the season. I like him coming in the middle of an inning and being able to get big outs. And let's not forget that the Mets also, a few days ago, picked up Gregory Soto, a guy who is great from the left side, really tough against lefties. He has power stuff. He could definitely be part of a late inning. You're facing the Phillies. You need to get Schwarber and Harper out. And then I could definitely see him in those big spots. Now, he does walk a lot of people, but he does have a power arm, and he's great against lefties. So the Mets clearly upgraded their bullpen to the extent where they're going to be a top bullpen in baseball if everything goes right. And we saw a lot of complaining yesterday about what they gave up to get these guys. Blade Tidwell and Drew Gilbert is what they gave up for Tyler Rogers. But at the end of the day, if you want to get something good, you have to give up something good. And really, those two guys had no future on this team. Tidwell is a future reliever, a guy who we saw in the major leagues. He got beat up in the major leagues this year. He's not really a starting pitcher, doesn't go deep into games. We don't need more of that going forward. He's a guy who profiles as a reliever going forward. Maybe an elite reliever because he does have really good stuff. But do we really see a big future out of Tidwell? Not like you do out of guys like Tong and McLean and Sproat. Those are their big time guys. And I don't see losing Tidwell being a big deal. Drew Gilbert was a guy who was in danger of being lost in the Rule 5 draft because he's an older prospect. He had no future on this team. He's already been passed up by Carson Bench, with Jet Williams playing center field now. I just don't think he really had a spot on this team going forward. So I have no issue with what you gave up to get Tyler Rogers. Was not a big deal, honestly. Looking at it at first, giving up those two guys and Jose Butto. Listen, Butto's not a loss at all. The guy's just not very good. So no issue with that. It's a win now type of move. And then to go get Helsley, you gave up someone that I did like in Jesus Baez, a guy that I think could be a really good player moving forward. But he's another one of those guys who's really raw. He's not ready to. He's 20 years old. He's not ready anytime soon. He's still a couple of years away from really even being in contention to come to the major league club. And he's got power, but he's very raw, and he hasn't figured it out yet. I saw a quote earlier that said he has really good power, he has really good tools, but he's not a good baseball player yet, and he doesn't know how to play the game yet. So sometimes those guys never figure it out. Maybe he compares a little bit to like a Ronnie Mauricio type, that mold, but he doesn't have the size and speed of Mauricio. He's more just like a slugger, or that's what he is probably going to be in the future. So even giving up Baez, not a huge loss. You give up Nate Dome, a pitching prospect, your number 14 prospect, another guy who probably profiles more as a reliever going forward. And then this guy, Elisalt, who nobody really knew about. It was one of those things where everybody was kind of Googling that name because he's nowhere near their top of their prospects. So another really good return for Ryan Helsley. I don't think you gave up too much to get either of those guys. If you want to be a World Series contender, you saw what the Dodgers did last year. Last year, the Dodgers killed you with their bullpen. Their bullpen just had guy after guy who came in throwing power arm after power arm, just completely destroying any chance you had at a comeback because they were all so good. And I think that's what the Mets were trying to do here, is just build those arms that just they keep coming at you out of the bullpen, especially when you have starters that don't go deep into games. You have to have a lot of guys in the bullpen who can get major big time outs late in games in the playoffs and in the World Series. You need those guys. And right now, that's what they did. But we know that this team has more holes than what they filled so far. They got the number one priority. Number two has to be center fielder. I just don't see them. Robert is not going to happen, it looks like, at this point, unless it's just talk by trying to get the price up for Robert. I don't see it happening right now. It seems like the White Sox are going to hold on to him. By the Phillies going out there and getting Harrison Bader, it seems like they tried to get Robert as well, and he just wasn't available, or they didn't want to give up what they needed to get him. But if you look at some reports, basically saying that the White Sox asked for Jonah Tong plus more prospects for Luis Robert. If that's a starting point, it's never going to happen. We can just write him off at this point because the Mets aren't giving up anything close to that level of prospect for Luis Robert. They just won't. For a guy that is really a lottery ticket, he could be somewhat of what he was a couple of years ago, but at the end of the day, the guy's hitting .213 right now. He's hitting .213 with 11 home runs and 43 RBIs. So he wouldn't be enough of an upgrade or enough of a sure thing of an upgrade to really go out and give up what you would need to give up or what the White Sox seem like they want. Yes, Cedric Mullins, I think, would absolutely be the next best guy, Like I said before, I don't know that he's a huge upgrade over what they have, but he would definitely be an upgrade. I think that Mullins, maybe a change of scenery for him after being on, the Orioles. They're not playing well this year. Coming to a team that's a contender, yes, but he's also not great defensively. His defensive metrics show he's not the same type of center fielder that he once was as he gets older. But he will provide more pop. He'll get more, he'll just be a better bat overall, hitting low in that lineup. He's not a middle of the order type. I don't know how much he's not a difference maker, but yes, he is better than what they have, and I don't think you have to give up much to get him because he's a rental. But yeah, there's not even a lot of rumors really going on with the Mets right now. I mean, you can see really it's about who they're out on. It's not about who they're in on right now, and I think hopefully that picks up in the next hour or two. And I don't think Stearns is done. And when the Mets traded Ramon Marsh back to Baltimore. Oh, so is it done? Did they actually get Cedric Mullins? Or are you just saying you hope that's what it is? Oh, okay, yeah, okay. All right, so the Mets do get Cedric Mullins, and honestly, that's probably about the best that we could have expected right now. I don't think it's a needle mover. I don't think that it's something that makes the Mets now some type of favorite to win a World Series getting Cedric Mullins, but he's better than what they have, and I think that's going to really solidify center field for them. Looking at what's going back, it doesn't seem like they gave up very much low-end kind of prospects there. You didn't give up a top 10 guy or even a top 20 guy, it looks like. So, honestly, it's a good trade. If you're there, let me see what the actual... Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's a pretty good pickup there for if you're not giving up big-time prospects. It was clear to me that the Mets were going out there and they didn't want to trade, especially their big-time pitching prospects, whether it's Jonah Tong or Nolan McLean or Brandon Sproat. They did not want to trade those guys. It seems like everyone else was kind of available, especially because their prospects aren't rated all that highly outside of their top maybe 5 or 6 prospects. Everyone else is kind of, expendable. They don't have guys who aren't able to be traded. Like you look at what Mason Miller, what the Padres gave up to get Mason Miller is crazy to me. They gave up the number 3 overall prospect in all of baseball to get a reliever. And listen, he's a good reliever and he's young and he has years of control and he throws 104 miles an hour and that's all great, but you trade possibly a future star, your number 3 overall prospect for Mason Miller. I mean, that's nuts. But yeah, this is a good deal overall. The Mets have made good deals. Okay. And the Yankees made a deal, obviously getting Bednar. Looks like they picked up another reliever, Jake Bird from Colorado. So the Yankees bullpen definitely got better. There's just the reliever prices were high, and the Mets were able to get 2 of those guys, and the bullpen is solid right now. And after getting Cedric Mullins, their real big need going forward is starting pitcher. And I don't know that they're necessarily in on starting pitchers right now. There's a lot of smoke around Sandy Alcantara, Edward Cabrera, even Dylan Cease, although that's died down since the Padres got Mason Miller. Now it seems like maybe they're going to keep Cease and keep Suarez and try to really go for a World Series. I could see that being the case. I don't really want Cease. It seems like he's not washed, but he's not the same guy that he was before. I think that the guys who throw really hard, especially from a starting pitcher wise, they're kind of becoming less effective because everybody throws so hard now. Cease for a long time was a guy who threw in the upper 90s as a starting pitcher, and he got a lot of strikeouts. And he still gets a lot of strikeouts. He gets a lot of swing and miss. But those guys just aren't as effective as they were because everybody is going out there and throwing 97, 98, 100 miles an hour. So they're just less effective. As you see, a guy like Tyler Rogers, who, is a submarine pitcher, he throws, I think his fastball averages like 83 or 84 miles an hour, and he gets a lot of swing and miss, and he gets a lot, he's not a huge strikeout guy, but because he's deceptive and because it's coming from a different angle and a different velocity. He's just overall a really good pitcher because you're just not used to seeing guys like that anymore. So that's a big pickup. Yes, Alcantara is having a terrible season, but he's been better as of late. I think his last 3 starts, he's given up less than 1 run in all 3 of those starts. He's a guy coming off Tommy John, so I think that he definitely struggled early in the season. I think at one point his ERA was like over 7. He had not had a good season, and I don't see the Mets picking up Alcantara because of what it's going to take to get him. I think to get him, you have to fix him. You have to still work him in slowly. He's the type of guy who he's still not going 7, 8 innings, which is what he was so great about him before the injury. He was able to give you a lot of innings. He didn't walk a lot. He didn't strike out a lot. He didn't throw a ton of pitches, so he was able to get you deep into games. I like Alcantara too, but I just don't see them giving up what the Marlins would want for him. I think you're giving up a top, one of your top maybe 5 or 6 best prospects. You're probably giving up someone like Brandon Sproat in a deal for Alcantara, and I just don't know that that's what I would do. Not that I think Brandon Sproat is going to be even as good as Sandy Alcantara, but he has a better chance because he's young and he's not injured, and he's not coming off of a Tommy John surgery. So I would not be upset if they got Alcantara, but I wouldn't want to give up what they would have to. And honestly, for Edward Cabrera, you'll probably have to get up more because he's ascending. He is a guy who is having his best year so far. So I think that you probably would have to give up even more for Edwards. That's why I don't think they really pick up a starting pitcher. I was almost wondering if maybe there was going to be a trade if they get Cedric Mullins. Maybe they also get a Charlie Morton in that deal. But it doesn't seem like the Mets want to go that route. The Mets I think they're looking and saying, if we don't get a top of the line or a guy that we think could be a top of the line starting pitcher, then it's probably not worth it to get a starting pitcher. And then there was rumors that they're going to start calling up some of their young guys, whether it's Nolan McLean or Brandon Sproat, to maybe fill that role. Either way, at this point, like Clay Holmes has to go to the bullpen. He can't get through 4 innings. So if Clay Holmes could be your bulk innings kind of guy, I think that would be a good thing. Maybe you bring up Sproat or you bring up McLean and have them be a 4-inning pitcher, and then you have Clay Holmes go for 2, 3, 4 innings. That could be a good way to get a guy like Sproat or McLean into it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see who exactly they traded for Mullins. Their 30th ranked prospect was the top prospect they gave up, and that was Ramon Gomez. So I know he was a good prospect. He's a young guy, I believe. I'm not so sure on him. I'm pretty sure he was a young guy who has a good future, but he's still I think he's an A or high A at this point. So you didn't give up much to get Mullins. He's a rental. He's not going to be on the team past this season. It's clear to me that the Mets are looking towards the future of Carson Benj being the center fielder. I don't know how interested they were in getting Robert, just because he has those options, and if you trade for him and have to give up what they wanted, you're probably picking up that option for next year, and maybe you're holding Carson Benj down. Benj is tearing through the minor leagues, and I think by sometime next season, not opening day, but sometime next season, Benj will probably be their starting center fielder. So getting Mullins on a rental for lower end prospects, I think, is a great deal for the Mets. They didn't give up much to get him, and they still kept their top guys, especially those pitching prospects, because as we know how David Stearns treats pitchers, especially free agent, older 30-year-old pitchers, he's not going to give big contracts to those guys. So the Mets are going to rely on these young pitchers coming up and contributing and being top-level pitchers right away, because they're going to kind of get these guys like Montas and, Manaea for a couple of years, and Clay Holmes coming from bullpen. That's how Stearns is going to build the rotation until these young guys are ready to go. So I just don't think that they're going to, get rid of any of those young pitchers. Yet, I don't know, Jet Williams, to me, I don't know what to think of him, because I know they have him playing a lot of center field now in the minors. I know he's played shortstop, he played second base. I don't know, because it seems like Jet Williams would already have been up if he didn't have some injury issues in the near past. He had some injury issues. I don't remember exactly what it was. I know he missed a lot of time last year, broken bone in his foot or in his hand or something. I know he missed some time. If he didn't miss that time, he might be a guy who'd be up already. So I don't know exactly where he fits in. I think he's eventually going to be passed by guys like Carson Bench. But I don't know. It's still kind of to be seen where Jet Williams fits in. But he's a guy with some speed. He's got a little bit of pop for a smaller guy. He can hit the ball, and I just don't know where his position is going to end up being. I know they thought of him as maybe a center fielder, but now with Benj, I don't know. Maybe Benj fits in more as a corner outfielder and Jet Williams center. I'm not really sure, but it's nice to have the options, right? As Met fans, like, you look at our prospect rankings right now, and we have so many guys who can step up. There's guys in the minors who could probably pitch for the Mets right now, or could play center field or second base for the Mets right now. It's just nice to have those options, and you already have Vientos and Beatty and Mauricio and Acuna on the major league level. So, it's nice to have options, and it's nice that on a trade deadline day we can do this and actually talk about the Mets making a move, because for years the Mets never made moves. 2022, when the Mets were in first place for the whole season, and then we end up with Daniel Vogelback and Darren Ruff as our free agent acquisitions. This isn't the same Mets anymore. Obviously, David Stearns is going for it here. He understands that this team is good enough to at least make a deep playoff run and possibly, make a World Series run. So he's doing this because he knows that those chances don't come along every year. I know last year maybe it was a little disappointing at the trade deadline, but this year he's clearly going for it. And there was reports that, I think it was Andy Martino, he said that David Stearns knows that his best window for a World Series is in the next 2 years. So he's really going for it, and he's going to go out there and make as many deals as he can. But we all know David Stearns is also about being smart. He's not going to make a deal just because he can. He's going to do the smart thing, and I know a lot of people don't like that about him, and he's maybe thinks a lot, but he's got to do it. He's got to manage the future as well as the team now. But it seems like he's going for it. Cedric Mullins is going for it. The bullpen additions are going for it. Maybe they're still in on a starting pitcher. I don't know what the prices are. We haven't really seen any starting pitchers get traded, or any high-end ones, even though there's been a lot of talk about guys like Joe Ryan or Alcantara or Edwards or Edward Cabrera or Dylan Cease. Those guys aren't being traded. So we'll see what the market is for starting pitchers. I think a lot of teams realize, like, you win with a bullpen now. You don't necessarily win with starting pitching, and all the prospect capital is going towards relievers and not starters. So, I don't know. I think... Oh, sorry. Thought I saw something there. So I thought I saw another trade, but it was fake. Anyway, I would really like to see another starting pitcher, even if it's like a bulk guy who just gives you some innings, because I think they're thin right now. On the starting end, who do you really have as your next guy up? Paul Blackburn, like, I can't imagine seeing Paul Blackburn make another start for this team. I know there was teams calling about him, or the Mets were offering him in trades. Hopefully that's something that happens, even if it's for a very low end prospect just to get Blackburn out. I think the next guys up are guys like Sproat and McLean, who are proving it in the minor leagues right now. Those need to be the next guys. But if everything works out with this Mullins acquisition, I think we're kind of set offensively. Not that I think it's a great offense. I think the top four obviously has the ability to be great. I don't think Mullins is a great player, but he adds to this team, and he definitely gives you a lot more than Tyrone Taylor does. Maybe you see McNeil move back and play a little bit more second base. But I also heard some rumors that McNeil was a trade possibility. Houston was asking about him, and also they were asking about Brett Beatty and Vientos and those type of guys. So I don't think it's necessarily over for the Mets offensively. I think they could make a deal to sell a little bit, right? They're buying all these pieces, but I also think on the flip side, they could take Vientos and trade him for maybe another reliever or some prospects, or McNeil and trade him for some prospects, or a starting pitcher. I think that's a very decent possibility at this point. I just don't. They're not going to add any more offensively right now. Any other deals they make there are going to be maybe trading guys, because all four of those guys and five of those guys, there's not room for all of them to play. Whether it's Acuna or Vientos or Beatty or there's just not room for all of them. So I think they're going to decide on a couple that they want to keep around and possibly look to maybe trade a couple of those other guys. Yeah, I don't think that would be a bad deal. But see, I don't. I think we think much higher of Vientos than the rest of the league does at this point. I think that for like even when I put out a video a few days ago where the rumor was that the White Sox wanted Vientos for Robert basically straight up, and I was against it at the time. But thinking about it, I think maybe we're just very high on Vientos because of what he did last year. I don't see maybe the rest of the league thinking the same way about Vientos as we all do. We have the history with him. He came up through the system. He was hit 27 home runs last year and carried the Mets a lot through the playoffs. I just don't think you're getting all that much for him at this point. I mean, he's statistically, if you look into the advanced metrics, like one of the worst players in baseball this year. Definitely I think he's the worst third baseman and like a bottom five player in all of baseball. So I don't think you're getting anything really of value for Vientos. He would be part of of a bigger package maybe with some prospects as well as Vientos. I just don't think you're really getting very much for him at this point. I think McNeil could have some trade value only because of his versatility. He could play the outfield, he could play the infield. He could DH, he could do whatever you need him to do. He's just a baseball player, but that's a reason why I don't really want them to trade McNeil. Even though he doesn't really have a spot on this team, he does have a spot because he could play all spots. And I don't think you just give up a guy like that unless you're getting something in return. If you're getting a starting pitcher or you're getting maybe another bullpen piece, or I don't know where they'd really fit in another bullpen piece unless you're going to get rid of like Stanek. But I could definitely see McNeil moving only because I don't think his fit personality-wise is great with this team. I know he gets along well with Pete Alonso, but I don't know how great he is with Lindor and Soto and a lot of the newer guys. Yeah, absolutely. I think they need to get rid of one or two of these infielders because they're not all going to stick around. Now, maybe you wait until the offseason to do that, but at some point you're going to have to make a decision on who you're keeping and who you're going to trade away. You don't just give guys up, but there has to be something you can figure out, right? And I think it's going to come down to how these guys play. Is Beatty going to take over? Is he going to continue to hit, right? Is Vientos going to come back to form a little bit? Vientos has been hitting the ball a little bit harder lately. He hit the home run the other night in San Diego and got robbed of another one. Vientos also seems to kind of turn it on when everyone's against him, right? You saw he got sent down to the minors last year, and then he comes back with a vengeance. He always seems to do well when the pressure is on, and then maybe when the pressure is off, he doesn't. So I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Vientos, but I'm also not a huge fan of Beatty or Acuna or I like Ronnie Mauricio a lot. I think if any of them are kind of untouchable to me, it's Mauricio at this point, just because I think overall he has the highest ceiling of any of those guys. He's got power. And he's been really good defensively, and that was always the knock on Mauricio early on in the minor leagues. He couldn't play defense. But he's been pretty good defensively. He's got a cannon arm. He makes all the plays he has to. Overall, if it were up to me, Mauricio and Beatty are probably staying, and everyone else is kind of whatever happens, happens. And even Beatty, I'm not sold on. I would like to see Mauricio get a lot more playing time. I think he's figuring it out in the majors. But yeah, I don't know. This is trade deadline day, not who are we going to start day. But listen, these kind of things have to be talked about because there's a logjam there. We need to figure out who's going to play. We need some consistency and some guys playing every day. Even those comments by Vientos the other day saying he's starting to hit the ball well and now he's getting less playing time and everyone doubts him and it seems like he's pretty upset about the way things are going. Well, maybe he just needs to go. If he's upset and he doesn't, I'm not saying he's wrong for being upset. Absolutely, I'd be upset too. If I was a big part of the team last year and then this year people have kind of passed me, I get that. But at some point, you have to understand that you've played like crap for an entire season and you don't have a leash anymore. And if someone's playing better, they're going to play over you. That's just the way it works, or that's the way it should work in baseball. But we do need to see some more consistency on guys really taking over, and we haven't really had that yet. So Ramon Gomez, Anthony Nunez, Chandler Marsh, listen, all lower end kind of guys, not top guys. Whoa. Adolis Garcia to the Mets. That can't be true. No. No, I think that was a lie. Okay. Yeah, no real need for Adolis Garcia. I mean, I guess if you want a DH, but yeah, it looks like that was fake. So yeah, Cedric Mullins is the center fielder now for the Mets. Obviously, we saw Harrison Bader go earlier today. Luis Robert Jr. is not going to be traded at this point. If he does, really the only taker is going to be San Diego. San Diego was really the only other team mentioned for him. But now it's really just starting pitching. And honestly, I'd like to know what you guys think. If you would be going after a starting pitcher right now, who would you be going after? Would you rather just see one of the new guys come up and compete? I'm not really sure at this point. I don't know what the prices are going to be. I'm not all for trading big-time pitching prospects for these guys who, honestly, there's nobody out there or who's talked about right now that you have any confidence in being a frontline starting pitcher. Yeah, I see that too, Adolis Garcia, but I only saw one person mention it. I don't think it's true. Yeah, there's only one person that mentioned it. I probably jumped the gun there a little bit. I got excited. Guy with a lot of power, but he hasn't been good for a couple years now. I doubt that that's true. But it was a legitimate source. It just he was the only one that had it, so I don't see that as being something real, or everyone would be on it right now. Yeah, it was Mike DePort. That's why I'm like, you never know. He's kind of 50-50, but he gets a lot of stuff right, but he gets some stuff wrong too. So, listen, as a DH bat, if you can get him and maybe figure it out, I don't even know how. I know he was not doing well earlier in the year. I'm curious how his numbers are looking right now. But I also know that the Rangers were considered buyers, so I'm surprised that they would trade him at this point. Yeah, I mean, he's hitting .227 with 15 home runs and 62 RBIs and a .667 OPS. So I don't know that he really adds much anyway. But yeah, like you say, if Soto's hurt, maybe that's a deal that they do. If Soto's hurt worse than what we think. But listen, he's a guy who's had some success in the past. Not something I'd necessarily be in favor of, but he's a guy who's hit 39 home runs before. I guess if I can't be... I have to be honest, if I was into Luis Robert, who hit 38 home runs in 2023, then Adolis Garcia hit 39 home runs in 2023. So I have to be a little honest there. I guess you never know, right? It could happen. But yeah, I'm not going to take that as anything until I see Jeff Passan or Rosenthal tweet it out. I just don't see as a possibility right now. But you never know. I really think it's going to be starting pitching, if anything. Whoa. Now Wardy's saying it. Maybe Adolis Garcia. And this person here says for Vientos and Acuna. So maybe. I don't know. Until I see Passan or Rosenthal, then I'm not going to believe it. I don't believe it. Yeah, nothing yet from the big guys. So until it's a known thing, I'm not going to go crazy and say that it's true. But hey, listen, he's a guy who can hit. He's going to give you a lot of power. If he does, then maybe. Yep, still no alerts. So I'm not going to. It's a possibility, I guess. All right. Well, hey, that means David Stearns is still working. If those rumors are out there, then that means someone heard something. Mike DePortes is an actual reporter. He's a guy who has information. He has broken stories before. He's broken news before. So maybe, and now other people are starting to say it. So maybe. But yeah, I think we're focused on starting pitching, especially, like I said, a guy like Charlie Morton, an innings eater, a guy who's not necessarily going to be a number one for you or number two, but a guy who can give you some innings if need be. But we are getting 2 hours. We're 2 hours away now, basically, from the trade deadline. Um, Not a ton going on. The Yankees made a couple of deals. Let's just go over a little bit of some of the big deals that have happened. Right, last night you had Suarez going from Arizona to the Seattle Mariners, and honestly, that deal. Yeah, I mean, he is decently credible. He is decently credible, but he's not 100% correct all the time. But other people are starting to say it now. But anyway, Suarez did not go for what I thought he would go for. There was no top 100 prospects for Suarez as the biggest bat on the market last night. It just seems Astros have agreed to reacquire Carlos Correa. Okay, that's a good deal for them. I mean, I guess that takes him out of some of the Mets bats like McNeil or Vientos or guys like that. It was rumored that the Astros may have inquired about some of the Mets infield bats. Maybe if they pick up Carlos Correa, it's still, that takes them out of that. So maybe those guys stick around with the Mets, or they just got traded for, or they're about to be traded for Adolis Garcia. But yeah, I really think. Sorry, everything's coming out right now. But yeah, so I'm surprised that the biggest bat on the market last night went for no top 100 prospects, considering what all these relief pitchers are going for. There was really no big time bats on this market. It was Eugenio Suarez, and that's it. And for him to go, I think it was for the Mariners like 8th or ninth best prospect who wasn't even in the top 100, and then like their 17th or something like it wasn't big time guys. So it's surprising to me that he went for so little. And then you see a guy like Mason Miller who, yes, can be a great closer. Although his numbers aren't that great this year. He just throws 104 and he's very exciting. He's not a great player or not a great pitcher yet, but you're paying for his future. You're paying for his years of control, and to give up the number 3 prospect in all of baseball is crazy. I know the Padres are going for it, and I get it. They do this every year, but that's a crazy trade to me. I know David Bednar just went to the Yankees. They didn't give up much to get him. Their 8th best prospect, and the Yankees don't have a great farm system, so their 8th best prospect would be the 15th or 16th best prospect for the Mets. So it's they didn't give up much to get Bednar. That would be a deal that I would have liked the Mets to make, but I like where the Mets kind of went with their relief pitchers. Getting Rogers and getting Helsley. I think they did really well there. But yeah, there's been a lot of moves, but we haven't seen the big guys that we've been talking about for a couple of months now really go. Whether it's the pitchers in Alcantara or even Edward Cabrera, or, it's all been relievers for the most part. And I wasn't necessarily expecting that. I thought maybe a few more bats. Obviously, with Cedric Mullins signing, he was one of the bigger bats out there, and he's not even that big of a bat really. But at the end of the day, like, this has been a very interesting trade deadline. But right now the Mets are a little quiet with just the Cedric Mullins today. Yeah, and it looks like it's official. Carlos Correa is going back to the Rangers. That's a pretty big deal for the Astros. Baseball Purist was the first to report that here. That's a nice deal. Andy Martino is just tweeted out that the Yanks might not be done. Mets feel most likely done. So seems like maybe the Mets are not making any more deals, but also Andy Martino doesn't know what he's talking about half the time unless he's talking about the Yankees. So I don't necessarily trust that. I mean, he does have sources within the organization, but, he's not, he has more in the Yankees. But yeah, Carlos Correa going back to Houston is a huge deal. They definitely needed another bat, and that's a nice trade for them overall. But yeah, I mean, right now, other than Mullins, it's pretty quiet on the Mets front. Yeah, I think that Adolis Garcia thing was wrong. I don't see any of the big names talking about it. But it's crazy to me that the what the White Sox expected to get back for Luis Robert. I mean, asking for Jonah Tong plus. When we were originally talking about Robert, it was low level prospects or maybe Acuna or something like that. And I don't know what the White Sox are doing. That's a terribly run organization. Obviously, you look at them and even the Angels who added some relief pitchers yesterday. Like, come on, these teams are just going to consistently be bad because they don't want to. Just admit that they have no chance and just trade these guys and get prospects and get better. Did anyone elaborate on wanting interested in it? No, I didn't. Nobody really said anything about Alcantara or Cease. Listen, I would take those guys if the return wasn't crazy, but it seems like at this point, getting towards 6 p.m. where deals start getting a little more desperate, I don't think this is necessarily where David Stearns likes to operate. He likes to get deals and going out there and, picking up or trying to fight other teams at the last minute for a starting pitcher. I just don't see him doing something like that. It's just not the way I feel like he's going to operate. Yeah, Luis Robert. Yeah, they're gonna pick up his $20 million option for next year. But they're honestly, he's hot right now, and I think it would have been in their best interest to trade him now because over the last couple weeks he's hit better. He was there was no bats on the market, especially outfielders. There was no center fielder, and there's teams that needed a center fielder. So I don't know how his trade value, unless all of a sudden he goes on this great run, I don't see how his value is going to be any better in the offseason. I think it's going to be worse. I think right now, when you have teams that are desperate, like the Mets, to get a center fielder, you could get a lot more right now than you could in February, because in February, teams are kind of doing it. There's free agents, there's other options, there's different ways you can go. And unless someone really believes he's going to become a superstar again, there's no point of trading for a guy like that or giving up high-end talent for a guy like that because, it's just not worth it. There's other guys available. So right now he would have been the number one guy. Now, if Byron Buxton was available, right, or another big-time center fielder, or even if Mike Trout was available or something like that, then yeah, I could see holding him off to the offseason, but he was really the number one target for anyone who needed a center fielder. So why wouldn't you kind of strike while the iron's hot and go out and trade a guy like that and get as much capital back as you can? I don't know. It doesn't make a ton of sense why they wouldn't trade him. I just it really doesn't make sense to me. But whatever. We got Cedric Mullins, and honestly, Cedric Mullins is a lot less of he's more of a known quantity. You know what you're going to get with him. Now, he's not great. He's not going to be a great player. He's not a game-changing player, but he's going to be a solid bat in the lineup. He only hits about 230, but he's got some pop. I think he's got 15 home runs this year, 40-something RBIs. He's had a okay season, but over the last couple months, he's been struggling a little bit. But you put him on a contender where he can really maybe get back to what he was, which was never a great player, but it was a pretty good player. It was a pretty good major league player. And he's better than Tyrone Taylor. I'd rather have him playing center field than Jeff McNeil. So overall, good deal there. But yeah, according to most people on Twitter right now, the Mets seem to be done. And it's so crazy. People just start complaining. Like, I was reading a tweet, Yanks might not be done, but the Mets are. And then everybody's like, oh, Sleepy Stearns, he gets 3 rental players. What did you expect? There was nobody out there that's really a game changer right now. Who did you expect them to go out and get? Now, if Byron Buxton were to have gotten traded somewhere else and the Mets were not involved and maybe the Mets could have gotten it, then sure, you could be upset that David Stearns doesn't make that deal. But he wasn't. There was no big names out there. There was no big bats. There was no necessarily a starting pitcher that you feel comfortable giving up a lot for. So being mad at David Stearns a day after he just gave you an elite bullpen is kind of crazy to me. Mid-season trades are always lopsided. They're always unfair to the team getting the talent, but he did the best with what was available. David Stearns is never going to give away the farm for rental players. He gave up guys who he felt comfortable with giving up. He's not going to go crazy and give up top 100 talent for relievers and that kind of stuff. It just wasn't going to happen. So if you're upset with what you got out of David Stearns in this trade deadline, even if this is all they do, then I don't know what to tell you, because this was a good trade deadline, even if it's done. Now, that being said, would I love a starting pitcher who can go 6 innings? Yes, absolutely. That would cap off this trade deadline perfectly. I would feel good about the team going into the last couple of months here. But honestly, what else could you expect? You now have a top 5 bullpen in baseball, and you went from probably a bottom 5 bullpen in baseball to now having a top 5 bullpen in baseball. I don't get it. I don't know what you want the guy to do. You can't just go out there and get anyone you want because you want them. You have to give up players to get them, and that's even if those teams want to trade them. I don't know I mean, listen, Adolis Garcia, I don't know what he really adds to the team. He's having a down year. He's got power. He's an RBI guy, but I just, if you want to get him and DH him, or maybe Soto's hurt worse than we thought and he's got to play some outfield, sure. But what does he really give you that? I know he gives you more power, but what does he really give you that Starling Marte doesn't give you at this point in his career? He's not a great player anymore. He had a good year a few years ago, just like Luis Robert, but he's not a great player. I think he'd give you more pop. He'd make the lineup a little bit deeper, but is it really worth it? I don't know. It depends on what you give up. If you give up nothing for him, then sure. But if you have to give up a good prospect for him, then no, I don't think the Mets would really be interested, or it would be smart for them to do a deal like that. The New York Mets are not trading for Adolis Garcia. So, yeah, I don't know. Someone jumped the gun on that. They heard a rumor and posted it as if it happened, it seems like. So, that happens a lot during the trade deadline. Everyone wants to break the news, so everyone tries to be first, and they just put things out there. And Adolis, I mean, I don't know why they would trade him anyway. They're kind of going for it, right? I think they were rumored to be buyers more than sellers this deadline. Yeah, so it's being reported by a lot of places that the Mets are basically done at this point. And if that's the case, hey, listen, I'm fine with it. I can be comfortable. Listen, is there guys that I would like to go out and get? Sure, but I'm fine with what they've done in this deadline. They're not a perfect team. They're not going to be a perfect team going into this last couple months of the season. But they got better over the last 2 days, and really over the last week, because you have to add Gregory Soto into that too. The Mets got better over the last week, and that's all you can really ask at this time of year. They got better, and a team that's 15 or 14 games over 500 to get better. Hey, what can you ask for? They took their biggest weakness and made it a strength. Yeah, their offense might still struggle at times, but really that's because these top 4 guys in the lineup have to kind of get off their ass and do it, right? They haven't been hitting. Pete Alonso has been terrible for a while now. Francisco Lindor has been terrible for a while now. And I think that if you look at Pete Alonso, it goes back about 40 games that this has been happening, and it's when he got hit on the hand. So maybe he's dealing with an injury that is more serious than they're letting on. Francisco Lindor has been bad since he broke his toe. Are these guys playing through injuries and they're just not performing? Maybe, but if that's the case, then they got to get out of the lineup, because they're not even performing. Honestly, if I'd rather see Acuna out there than Lindor sometimes right now. He's just swinging at balls in the dirt. He just doesn't seem like he even has a chance sometimes. You look at Alonso, the same thing's happening. Yeah, he runs into a home run every once in a while or bloops a single into center field, but he's given you nothing for a while now. Soto's been very inconsistent lately. After his great June, he had a pretty bad July. At least since the All-Star break, he hasn't been good. So, yeah, Rangers. Yeah, see, the Rangers are adding So that was just a BS rumor though. Yeah, that's true, Buzz. Like honestly, maybe the home run record is getting to him, but I think it goes back to his hand, and then he missed that game. Didn't miss the whole game, but didn't start a game last week because of a contusion on his hand or something. So I think there's more going on with him injury wise than they're letting on. I think the same thing with Lindor, and we just have to hope that maybe they figure it out and get healthy and get back on a run. But they've always been streaky guys. Those two especially, and Nimmo, they're streaky, and that's how they've always been. They look amazing for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they don't get a hit for 2 weeks. That's just how they are. In a lot of ways, that's how baseball is. But it seems like the Mets have a few guys, especially that just do not that are just extremely streaky, and it's frustrating, but it kind of is what it is. Yeah, I think he is playing through the hand injury. I think that's what his issue is. I think he's or he's I don't even know. I don't know at this point. Alonso is looking more like last year's Alonso than early this year's Alonso. Could it be the hand injury? Could it be chasing the record? I don't know. But he's got to figure it out. And if he's injured, he needs to sit out a few days. He just has to sit out a few days. I hope so, Buzz. Like it's frustrating to watch the Mets sometimes right now with their offense and their pitching. Yes, it's frustrating. They have guys who cannot go deep into games, and that's extremely frustrating. You have Clay Holmes and Montas and these guys who can't go deep. And honestly, Montas, I have really no issue with. He's supposed to be the fifth starter. Whatever. If he goes 4 2/3 or 5 innings and gives up 3 runs, that's all I expect out of him. I think that Clay Holmes. I was excited for Clay Holmes at the beginning of the season because it looked to me in spring training and early on that he had the stuff to be able to be a really dominant kind of starter. And boy, was I wrong. And anyone who thought that, like, he's a reliever. And maybe he's a bulk reliever. Maybe he can give you 2 or 3 innings out of the bullpen. Uh, but he just needs to he needs to go back to the bullpen. And that only really happens if the Mets either pick up another starting pitcher today or they feel confident calling up Sproat or McLean. That's really the only way that happens. And I just don't know that that's going to happen. It doesn't seem like right now they're going to get a starting pitcher. Hopefully, maybe they bring up one of those young guys. See what you have at least. I'm not expecting them to be an ace right off the bat, but I do think that maybe you see something in them. Maybe it sparks something in the team. Maybe they go out and pitch 6 innings. That would be nice. The only guy who can go 6 innings on this team is David Peterson. Yeah, I just don't know. I understand, like, Holmes looked good early in the year. We all thought Holmes was, we liked the move early, but it's just, he's fizzling out. He's pitched more innings than he's ever pitched before in his life, and it's showing at this point. He's just not able to give you quality innings anymore. He's just not, and I don't think it's going to continue, or I think it's going to continue being a problem. And then the Mendoza was in the post game after the last home start, and they said, "What do you think about Holmes? Like, are you concerned?" Nope, no concern. Everything's fine. We expect him to be great. And I understand a manager can't sit there and down his own player and say, this guy's pitching like crap right now, and we're going to move him back to the bullpen. But but he was also asked, like, are there conversations of moving him back to the bullpen? He said, no. This is how it's going to be. And it's like, well, you got to at least have those conversations. He's not doing well. Oh, we got a Jeff Passan. Oh, the Astros are making deals. They got Carlos Correa, and now they have traded for Jesus Sanchez from the Marlins. So the Astros are still making deals right now. The Astros are in a tough spot because they don't have much of a farm system. So I don't know. I mean, getting Carlos Correa is a big deal. And apparently Carlos Correa, I believe he had a no-trade clause, and there wasn't very many teams interested in him because he wasn't very interested in leaving Minnesota. But going back to Houston, maybe that's where he wanted to go. So good pickups for Houston. They're a good team. They're definitely one of the better teams in the AL. That's a team you could honestly, if the Mets were able to get to the World Series, that's a team that you could definitely see them playing. Ken Rosenthal's also reporting that the Astros are working very hard to acquire Dylan Cease. So the Astros are going for it right now. The Astros are definitely going for it. So that guy who tweeted that the Mets traded for Adolis Garcia, Mike Rodriguez, someone DM'd him and said, "Did the Mets really trade for Adolis Garcia?" And he said, "I don't know." So I guess he's just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. Yeah, I think Swift. I think that he will definitely. I think that's what's going to happen. I think David Stearns is looking at the prices on these pitchers right now. He's not going to start negotiating against other teams, and it's just. It doesn't seem like something he wants to do. I don't know what other teams are looking for. I guess if the Astros end up with Cease, we'll know what the prices were like. But there's also nobody out there that I'm really that interested in, right? Are you interested in Dylan Cease? We saw him a couple days ago. He doesn't look like the same guy. Alcantara has got an ERA in the fives. Is he the guy? I don't know. Yeah, that isn't very credible. Apparently, from his bio, it says that he was a former Cubs reporter. So take for that what you will, right? It doesn't, not very credible, but it started being reported by a bunch of different people too, or at least not necessarily reported, but people were reacting to it on Twitter. But it doesn't seem like it really had any validity whatsoever, and not really a trade that I would ever expect them to make. I don't think they're trading for another outfielder that can't play center field. Doesn't make a ton of sense. So yeah, if this is the trade deadline, I'd like to know how you guys feel about it. Do you like this deadline? Do you like what they've done? Do you want them to do more? Do you expect them to do more? I'm curious what everyone's thoughts are, because I know everyone has their opinions. You're going to have people who say Stearns didn't do enough. You're going to say he gave up too much prospect capital. Nobody's ever going to be happy. Personally, I think it was a great deadline if this is all it is. Would have liked one more pitcher. Would have liked a better bat than Mullins, but really there was no one available. So, I don't know. I can't complain too much. Buzz likes it. Yep. I think it's good. I mean, honestly, what more could you ask for? I mean, I know you could ask for whatever you want, but what more could you expect? And think about the years that we had, yeah, the untouchables, and that's really, to me, the untouchables. Sproat's not really on that list anymore, but Jonah Tong, Nolan McLean, Carson Benj, and Ilian Pena are the only guys in the system that I wouldn't give up. Jet Williams is their best prospect, but I would give him up just because they have guys who can play the position that he plays. I'm not a prospect hugger, but there are some guys that I would definitely give up, like a Jet Williams, because I just think you have so many guys who already fill those spots. Exactly. They got a closer in Helsley who, if Diaz leaves, they would be much more likely to re-sign Helsley because he's not going to get as much money. So you get him in the organization. Yes, Padres get Ryan O'Hearn. Okay. The Padres are making moves. Now, the Padres, I don't understand how they operate, because every year the Padres give up tons of prospects, and then the next year they have top prospects again. So they're run really well. They must be really good at scouting, really good at player development, because the Padres always seem to have top level prospects. They just do. They had the number 3 prospect in baseball, and they traded him for a reliever. And by next year, they'll trade for another guy, and they'll get out another top prospect. Thanks, Swift. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on, but none of it around the Mets. Mets are comfortable with what they have, but won't turn down a deal. So it seems like they're still on the phone. They're still taking calls. They're still will make a deal if it presents themselves, but they're not actively trying to go out there and look for another starting pitcher. Oh wow, that was for Laureano too. So it was O'Hearn and Laureano. Yeah, the Padres got better, and we saw they're a good team. They just swept the Mets, and they just got better. Picked up O'Hearn, Laureano, and they picked up Mason Miller. And the Padres already had a great bullpen, and they picked up Mason Miller. So the Padres are going to be a tough team this season. Uh, Definitely a top team in the NL. And but are they going to win a World Series? I don't know. They seem to be chokers. Sorry, I just want to take a second to see if there's anything else going on right now. Yeah. So yeah, it's the Astros and the Padres making all the deals right now. And if the Astros also pick up Dylan Cease, that would be a huge pickup for the Astros. I think the Astros are making themselves maybe the favorite in the American League right now. I thought the Mariners did a great job. Yeah, Preller really is. He goes for it every single trade deadline. Whether it was Soto a couple years, like he's always going for it at the deadline, and it always seems like he's even sometimes he buys and sells in the same deadline, and it ends up working out. Like he's a good GM, and they're aggressive. They're an aggressive team, and they go out there and they try to fill holes. They try to make big splashes, and they don't always work out, but they're always going to go out there and try. They're not comfortable with what they have ever. They're always trying to get better, and they have a really good offense already, and now adding O'Hearn and Laureano to it, they just got even better. So they're going to be a tough team to play if the Mets have to play them in the playoffs. And I know that if the season were to end today, the Mets would be playing the Padres in the playoffs. So that's a tough thing for the Mets. The Mets never really play well against the Padres, especially in San Diego. I just not a team you want to see in the playoffs. With their pitching, especially that bullpen, they already probably had the best bullpen in the game, and now they added Mason Miller. You don't want to play the Padres right now. The Dodgers have kind of fallen apart in a lot of ways, and the Padres are picking up that mantle. Okay, yeah, yeah. Well, that just goes to show you that rumor was complete nonsense, because the Rangers are not trading or not selling. So to activate Rogers, to add Rogers to the 40 man, they put Winker on the 60-day injured list. I'm not sure exactly when he went back on the injured list, but that might end his season if I'm not mistaken. He came back didn't he come back in the Yankee series like around July 4th? So maybe mid-September or something, Winker could come back, but it seems like Winker's pretty much done at this point. And I think that's what's gone wrong for the Mets a lot this season too. We forget that Jesse Winker was supposed to be a big part of this offense. Even Jose Siri, we talk about having Tyrone Taylor play every day in center field and being bad in center field. Uh, Siri was supposed to basically split time with Tyrone Taylor, and I don't think Jose Siri is a great player, but what he gives you is speed and power, and would have added to this lineup. He's an electric type of player. When he gets on base, for the Mets, he got on base 5 times, and he scored all 5 times. So he's electric on the bases, has power, and they're missing a lot of that in this lineup. Having him as your 9 hitter, if he gets on base, and then you have the top of your order coming up, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to score every time. Yeah, it seems like Winker is done as a Met. He's not. Unfortunately, I like Winker. I liked bringing him back, but it didn't work out this year. Too many injuries. Even when he did play, he was inconsistent. Winker's done as a Met. It seems like so. Not what you really want to see, but hey, it is what it is. You got Mullins now. Yeah, so it seems like a lot of deals are happening at the moment, and the Mets are probably done at this point. I mean, you never know because with the Mets too, they're also one of those teams that you don't really know what they're doing, and then all of a sudden it happens, right? We heard for a long time with the Mets, we weren't hearing about Helsley. We weren't hearing, about Helsley or Tyler Rogers. We were hearing about Duran and even Clase before he got his suspension. We were hearing about Bednar, uh, or Jax. Griffin Jax was a huge name for the Mets, and then they go out and get Helsley and Rogers, who were never linked to them at all. So all these reporters who say, you know, the Mets are going after this guy or the Mets are done and they're not getting anything else. I don't know. I take that with a grain of salt because the Mets don't leak information. They don't know what's going on, or they don't tell anyone what's going on or what they're planning on doing. It just happens. The Mets trades and signings and all that, they just kind of happen. So I'm not giving up on it, but it does seem to me like they're kind of done at this point. Um, but they also did nothing all day. And then all of a sudden, we got the Cedric Mullins news. Just refreshing here. Yeah, so Mike Puma reported that the Mets transferred Winker to the 60-day injured list, meaning he won't see him before early to mid-September. And the Mets and Phillies both got better. The Mets and Phillies all got better, or both got better. The Phillies picking up Duran. It's what they needed. I'm surprised they didn't get another relief pitcher. I would have liked, or I don't. I'm glad they didn't, but I'm surprised they didn't go after more relievers. Like the Mets got two guys, and the Phillies really have struggled. They don't really have too many. They don't have anyone in their bullpen. Kerkering has been their only decent relief pitcher, really. Everyone else has struggled greatly. So I'm surprised they didn't pick up more, but Duran is better than the two guys that the Mets got. But I think the Mets did better because they got quantity. They got two, or really got three, to their one. Which channels are cringe? I hope you're not talking about mine. I also saw something that someone said that, shoot, I forget. I lost it. The Phillies were making a deal, but I can't find it now. It was for an outfielder, I believe. I honestly would have liked Laureano for the Mets, but he doesn't play center field. And left field and right field are taken up. I'm not comfortable moving Nimmo to center field. I just don't think he has. No, I know. I was kidding around, Buzz. You're a commenter on here. I know you're on here a lot. Thanks for that. But I wouldn't feel comfortable with Nimmo playing in center field, just because he doesn't have the range anymore, and Laureano's not really a center fielder. I know he can play center field, but I would have liked his bat more than Mullins in the lineup. I just don't think he fit as well. Oh, I heard. That was the rumor I saw. Stephen Kwan to the Phillies. I don't. I think it was just a rumor. I don't think it's actually happened. I think to get Stephen Kwan, they would have to give up. Anyone would have to give up a lot. Apparently, they were asking so much for Kwan. And listen, Kwan is a great player. He's a really good contact hitter. He's one of the best contact hitters in the game. But is he a game-changing bat? I don't think so. And apparently the Guardians were asking for top 10 prospects, multiple top 10 prospects to get him. So I don't know. Kwan, he wasn't a fit for the Mets because he doesn't play center field. Could he play center field? I don't know, but he wasn't really a fit. I mean, I think the biggest winners of this trade deadline have to be the Padres. I think the Mets are up there. I think the Mets completely redid their bullpen and have a great bullpen, and I think Mets are definitely five, a top five trade deadline grade. But the Padres, I mean, they added Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano, J.P. Sears, Mason Miller, and they got Freddie Fermin. Uh, and they did. They I mean, they gave up a lot to get those guys, but they were close already. They were already a good team, and they got all those players. So the Padres are looking good. The Astros are looking good after getting Correa. But listen, Correa is not Correa anymore. He's not the same guy. But we all know what he does in the postseason. And the Astros are one of the better teams in the American League. They're going to be competing to get to the World Series. So the Astros did a good job. And I think the Mets and Phillies completely redoing their bullpen. They're right up there. And it's not over. We don't know who else is going to go. We haven't really seen any big starting pitchers go. They just Dylan Cease, Alcantara, Edward Cabrera. Like, we've talked about them over and over. None of them have gone, and I'm surprised. They're either going to come down to the wire, or people are just asking way too much, and nobody's willing to pay the prices. Yeah, there's nothing. There's nothing going on with the Mets right now. I think we're probably done. Sorry, I just keep refreshing like I've been doing all day. We have Mark Healy, who, listen, Mark Healy is kind of an old time sports writer in New York. I don't think he has a job currently. Like, I don't think he writes for anyone specifically. He's not a beat writer anymore. I don't think he's a columnist, but he still keeps up on X. And he says he's having a hard time believing the Mets are not going to move one of Beatty, Vientos, Acuna before 6 p.m. Now, he's not always right. He kind of, I think he speaks more as a fan and as, I don't think he really has many sources anymore, but he's a guy who maybe you could trust his gut a little bit because he's been doing this a really long time. I think there is still one more big deal to be made, not by the Mets, but in general, and I think it's going to be Kwan. I think Kwan's going to be traded somewhere, whether it's the Padres, but I don't think they really have a spot for him anymore now that you get Laureano. I think Kwan's going to get traded. I hope it's not the Phillies. I think that would be a huge pickup for the Phillies if they are able to get Kwan. I would not be a fan of that. I'm surprised the Yankees haven't done more too, man. Like, honestly, they got a couple pieces in the bullpen. They need a starting pitcher. They're a team that I would think could give up a lot for a starting pitcher because other than Max Fried, what do they really have? I mean, I know you have Luis Gil coming back. You know, Rodon's been up and down, but more down than up lately. You got Marcus Stroman. I'm surprised that the Yankees didn't go out for a starting pitcher. That was a team that I really thought would be in there. But, hey, we still got another hour and 20 minutes, so you never know. I'm probably not going to stay on until 6 if it seems like this is what they're going to do. It doesn't make a ton of sense to stick around here if it seems like they're done, which it kind of does. I'm just trying to see if there's another big deal that comes out. Because honestly, if I see a big, Sandy Alcantara get traded and whoever gets him doesn't give up much, I'm going to be surprised the Mets weren't involved in that. That's crazy. The Padres are just going for it. Yeah, Stroman. It was funny before the season. All the Yankee fans were saying, your number 3 starter is Clay Holmes. It's like, I'd still rather have Clay Holmes as my third starter than Marcus Stroman at this point, even though he can't go 4 innings. Neither can Marcus Stroman. And in Stroman's 4 innings, he gives up 5 runs. Clay Holmes generally only gives up 2 or 3 in 4 innings. Yeah, it seems like it's pretty dead for the Mets. I gotta say, though, I am a little bummed that Luis Robert didn't end up a Met just because it had the feel of something where he would have gone on a run. Now, I don't think he's a great player. I don't think he's going to be an all-star all of a sudden. I didn't think that was going to happen. going forward, but I thought that he would go on a nice run for a few weeks or maybe even a month and really carry them offensively, because he does have the ability to do that. He's got a lot of speed, a lot of power. He has the ability to carry a team, carry an offense, make an offense better. But at the end of the day, it's probably a good thing it didn't happen. We'll take the rental in Mullins and hope that he's able to do a little bit of something. But if you really look, it's crazy the way that the Mets bullpen lays out now. Just a month ago, we were all sitting here complaining about Ryan Stanek pitching the eighth inning. A few days ago, we're worried about Ryan Stanek and Reed Garrett and Brazaban, and even not so long ago, Max Kranick and all these guys. And then Chris Davinsky, and forget about those guys, Dickie Lovelady. And now you have really like closers pitching in the eighth inning. If those days that Diaz needs the extra day off, he's pitched 2 days in a row, you have another guy there who has closed games. He's 21 out of 26 in saves this year. You know, you have your lefty-righty late inning between Tyler Rogers and Soto, your left-right splits in the seventh. And, like, this bullpen is unbelievable right now. And I don't think it's hit us yet how much better our bullpen really is. It's crazy what David Stearns was able to do just in a week, and really in a day, yesterday, getting 2 huge pickups, and guys that weren't even on our radar. So, yeah, good overall pickups. So Andy Martino, someone tweeted at him and said, "I hope they're not done. Fantastic deadline thus far, but we need a starter." And he said, "Don't see it." So take that for what you will. Doesn't look like it's really going to happen. I think we're done here. Which is fine. I respect it. You know Stearns isn't going to go crazy. He's just never going to do that. Yeah, well, I think Minter was signed for 2 years, but I think it was like a 1 year with an option, but I think it's his option, if I'm not mistaken. I'll look up the contract. It was either a 2-year deal or a 1 year with an option. But yeah, I mean, I think he'll be back next season. Look up his contract real quick. I guess it was just it's a 2-year, $22 million contract. It has an opt-out, a player opt-out after the season. So he can opt out if he wants to, but I doubt after missing an entire season he's going to opt out. So he'll be back there. Yeah, I didn't love what I saw from Minter early in the season. Now, he's a big game pitcher. He's got guts. He's a great lefty. But I think he's just getting older, and I don't think he was necessarily a great signing. He's not a power arm. He's more of a crafty kind of lefty. Yeah, like Glavine. Absolutely. I don't like signing ex-Braves at all. But at the end of the day, like, the bullpen went downhill once he got hurt. They needed a real solid lefty, and now they have 2. They have Soto, and they have Brooks Raley. I mean, you have 2 guys who, when you're going up against the Phillies, are able to get Schwarber and Harper, or when you go up against the Dodgers, you have 2 guys who you can get Ohtani out with. It's just, I'm really happy with the construction of this bullpen. You have some power arms, you have some soft tossers. You know, even look at from the left side of the lefties, right? You have Brooks Raley, who's more of the finesse guy, doesn't throw incredibly hard, has good movement, knows how to pitch. And then you have Soto, who doesn't always know where the ball's going, but he's a power pitcher, throws hard, has the hard slider. Overall, just you have 2 different looks, and you can decide who you want to give that to in any situation. Same thing from the right side. You have Tyler Rogers, who comes at you with a weird angle, coming from underneath, throwing 83 miles an hour. And then you have Helsley, who throws 100 miles an hour. More traditional power arm. So you have really good options from both sides. And then you add in Reed Garrett, who really was your late inning, 7th, 8th inning guy. Now he's going to be coming in the 5th and 6th inning. Ryan Stanek, same thing, 5th and 6th inning. I know they were talking to Stanek after the game when they said we're telling him who they picked up, and he said that's great. Now I'm going to be pitching in the fifth inning instead of the eighth inning. So that's a telling kind of comment from Stanek. Stanek has been very up and down. Not a guy I love in the late inning situations. It's gotten really quiet. We had that little flurry, and now everything has kind of gone quiet. I'm surprised the Cubs haven't done anything. I'm surprised. The Cubs and the Brewers have really done nothing. I think the Cubs made a deal. I just don't. It wasn't a huge deal. The Red Sox haven't done anything. The Blue Jays haven't done much. The Yankees have, they made a couple of deals, but they haven't done much. I'm surprised the Braves haven't traded any of their guys. I'm surprised the Braves haven't been getting rid of any of their players. I thought Ozuna probably has limited kind of market because he's strictly a DH. He has the history of some law stuff, and he's injured. But you would think someone would want Marcell Ozuna to be their DH, but he hasn't gone anywhere. Yeah, it's gotten really quiet here. Just keep refreshing. Yeah, once I actually have a chance to sit down and consider this trade deadline, there'll probably be another video that comes out about exactly how everything went and what I thought of the trade deadline and all that. But right now I'm really happy about it. But it seems like they're done at this point. I don't think there's much more to say. I don't see a big deal happening at the last minute. It isn't Stearns' way. So I'm probably going to get out of here. No use hanging around when nothing is really going to happen. But I will... Alright. But yeah, I'll probably put out a video in the next couple of days kind of going over what I think about the trade deadline and who the winners and losers are. But for right now, nothing really going on. So probably going to get out of here. And yeah, until next time, let's go Mets.